Aisha, this is the Global Digest think tank group, and you are our guest today. What are you doing exactly, and what is your background, your specialized area?
Yeah, sure, yes. Well, my name is Asha Rashdi, and I've done my BAs, MA, and PhDs in Middle Eastern politics. And within the field of IR, I had recently got my PhD, which is entitled A Comparative Studies of Securitization of Sect Identities, where I attempted to understand the regime securitizations of sect identities during the Arab Spring, both in Bahrain and Syria. I wanted to do a comparison studies between basically a monarchical system and a republican one, and I wanted to see and showcases the differences and the similarities between both regimes in suppressing civil demands. I am teaching at Qatar University, in charge of a course that is titled Qatar Foreign Policy and Comparative Politics, Intro to IR, Political Science, all of, let's say, the foundation level courses for students who are interested in international affairs or political science. I also teach the Middle East, the history of the Middle East and the contemporary history of the Middle East as well. I'm very much interested in the aspects of understanding conflicts and, let's say, states and actors, methods and ways of shaping narratives. So, this is briefly what I do.
I mean, you did a lot of activities, a lot of interesting, I guess.
There are courses that we teach in Arabic, and there are the other courses that we teach in English. But the primary language nowadays, it's Arabic. But we have few courses that we teach in English.
I see.
International, we have few international students, but the majorities are Qataris, locals. But we do have international students and students from the region as well. So it's up to the students to choose if they wanted to take the course in English, they can. But if they wanted to have it in Arabic, it's also available for them. It's their choice to make.
I see. Qatar is very small country, right, compared to Saudi Arabia or Iran or neighboring countries. So, in this small area, small territory, uh, I don't know how's Qatar geopolitics or foreign policy. As you said, you're teaching foreign policy. You are
Mhm.
more close to US or China or European or Iran or Saudi Arabia. How can you say Qatar I mean, foreign policy? What was your main foreign policy direction?
Well, the state's policy has been always attempting to balance whether if it was regional or even international powers. So we can't fight geography and we cannot choose where they want it to exist. There are various regional hegemonic powers within the region, and they all attempt to influence. So the state somehow, after, especially after 1995, they had to adopt an active approach. They had to rely on foreign powers for protection and invest heavily within, let's say, foreign equities and also within domestic policies that allowed the state somehow to gain the influence that it has. And definitely that was established through means of media and diplomacy in conflict resolution, use as tools to examine and exercise their influence. But still, whether if you were thinking or if you were to think that they have fixed alliances, I think that would be a misreading because we would definitely have relations with foreign powers, but at the same time, sometimes the foreign powers, they would be the main sources of the current conflict. As you've seen recently with the Israeli attack, it was basically because of the US attack on Iran, which they were against in the government, but they had to acknowledge the rising challenges, and they have, because where we exist on geographically, we have to make sure that everyone is somehow on a speaking terms with the others, because if God forbid, if a war were to basically takes its forms in the classical form where it would be direct wars, not proxy wars, then we would be the first country that would lose in such confrontation. So we attempt to maintain peace, stabilize the region, and engage with every parties, even if it was Iran and the rest of the GCC, which thankfully now have shifted basically the trajectory of their politics, which was hostile, but nowadays they're attempting to normalize and accept each other.
I see. I see. So you can say Qatar is I think you have a military U.S. military base
Oh,
in
yes,
Qatar, and
yes.
uh, how's you categorize Qatar and U.S. is alliance or just for economic interest or military interest, your relationship with U.S.?
No, I don't think that the alliances and the agreement between Qatar and the US is limited to basically economical aspects as we have seen back in 2023. I think that the US have shifted their basically natural resources need to themselves. They became self-sufficient. So they're not the number one consumer to Qatar as they used to be. Now it's China, actually. And with the agreements that Qatar has with the US, we definitely have the aspect of providing the security, maintaining the stability, and their common interests definitely with regards to the trajectory of the region and peace, if one would say, and stability. But our connections with the US is definitely not limited to the military or to the economical aspects. We have cultural influences. The biggest embassy actually in Qatar is for the US, and we're basically the only country in the region that has sorry. Yes, that has an Air Force base, and I think the Center CENICOM for the US is also based in Al Udeid. And definitely there is the connection between the currency with regards to the cultural aspects as well. If we wanted to step away from the economical one, we have the education city in Qatar Foundation. Most of the universities there, they're basically US-based universities that we've opened. So there is the cultural aspects and the influences that exist. Even in Qatar University, actually, the structure of the programs that we have, the grading systems that we have, it's a US institutional based one. So basically, instead of having like the the European system or the UK one, or even the Arabic system, which is pass or fail, or let's say 70 and above. No, in Qatar we have the A plus B, the letters, which is basically a system that is known of to be basically a driven US approach or system. And the languages, other than Arabic, basically as an official language, you have English, the existing of, let's say, the military itself provides by itself the existence of their family and they're part of the culture. You can see that. So it's an integration of both. I wouldn't say that the collaborations or the relations with the US is only limited to economic or security aspects. You can see it in the cultural, social, definitely strategic approach for visions and changes within the regions. They're somehow pretty much collided, I would say.
You see, as you said, economically, U.S. is less and less absorbing Qatar oil or oil and gas or natural resources. Uh, but China is emerging. They consume more Qatar natural
Yes.
resources, oil and gas. So economic may be, shifting,
Mhm.
but you still have a military security alliance or cooperation with US. I don't know the level of cooperation is strategic, but now you have to be keep remain of US protection, guarantee security, and you have to pay for military US base in Qatar.
There are a lot of agreements that keeps on being renewed and memorandum of understandings between Qatar's, let's say, defense ministry and the US. There is, yes, it's definitely a strategic alliances, but it's not a one-way street. The US is also influencing heavily on the region through Qatar. So the Hamas case, the Taliban's case, all of these scenarios and situations, they came through and came to be reality through the usage of Qatar as a mediator and as an ally to provide those spaces for dialogue and basically discussions that would have never happened if it wasn't for dependency of the US and Qatar. So I don't think it's only that Qatar that depends on the US, it's also the other way around. They depend on the Qataris to provide them with the connection needed, the understanding of the region, and somehow kind of like the mediator or the focal point between the US and the region, and also in shaping their strategic interest for the region.
I see. So of
Mhm.
course, US still strategic interest in Gulf region, and you said it's mutual assistance, mutual interest. Recently, Israeli airstrike in Qatar. How's the Qatar perspective, or was Qatar respond back?
Well, Qatar they were really furious actually. They were really mad with the strike. I don't think that it was acceptable. I'm sure if you went through the rhetoric or the media's release statement that came out of the foreign minister, it basically states how absorbed the situation was to them and how ridiculous somehow to them the attack, where basically the Hamas existing itself is based on the US request. So the Israeli attack wasn't expected, nor was it acceptable. And the US, no, they didn't attack the US base. The Israelis, they've attacked a neighborhood where they had a delegation of Hamas who existed there. And that delegation, I think it was based in a Defna area, which is a bit on the northern eastern side of Qatar, while Al-Udeid base is in the southern aspects of the state or the southern borders of the state. So it was a bit far from the US base. But still, it was a basically
President
let's say
area?
civil state. Yes, it didn't had any security aspects to it. It was basically a neighborhood that had schools, neighborhood that has houses. There was a building where basically the delegation of Hamas convened to discuss the treaty. And that was the time where Israel used that moment to pressure Hamas into giving up some of their cards of deals in their negotiation process. However, Qatar's response was still against the attack in itself. The US response was that they were surprised. They didn't know or they didn't green lighted or approved the process, and they've only known about it, like I think, couple of hours before the attack have happened. And according to Trump, uh, he was on his way to inform the leadership about the attack before it happens, but the Qatari response was that this wasn't acceptable. We have a security basically deal agreement with you, and you failed from your part with regards to the Israeli attack. So there was the pressure from the US on Israel, on basically Netanyahu to apologize, and he did. But Qatar, what they did, we can't use the military option. I don't think that we have the military capacities that would be able to attack or let's say respond back to Israel. But what they did is that they used the political pressure and they're taking legal actions against Israel.
I see. Maybe Israeli undermine Qatar because of you are small and you don't have capability to respond. So they just penetrate and airstrike into Qatar. So Qatar become Qatar was helpless at the time. Israel, U.S. allies, so probably they may do some action internal. Can you make legal action or not? It is international justice system is also a lot of trouble, so it is not easy. Even
Yes.
they are striking Iran.
They bombed Syria, they've bombed Iran, they bombed Lebanon, and they've actually sent a bit of bombs to Yemen and Iraq and what is it, Jordan. So Israelis, they have no restrictions whatsoever, but still, I don't think that we should undermine the legal actions. I'm sure that it has its ways on putting pressure on Netanyahu, as we see that there is the warranty against him, where he's now considered to be a criminal in the international community, at least. There is the attempt of social pressure and political isolation, actually, of Israel now that exists within the international community. There is the condemnness that came to Israel from all over the world, which I think somehow it would pay its benefits. The pressure from outside with the pressure from inside, it will definitely lead to some results that hopefully would lead the government of Israel to choose better decisions and tactics in dealing with its conundrums.
Iran will respond back, I think, a lot of things. And but I don't know Qatar relation with Iran. How's
Yes.
your relationship with Iran?
Well, the relations with Iran are, I would say, considered to be better than the other Gulf states, mainly because we do have shared economic interests. We have a shared gas field, actually, between Qatar and Iran. So it's not in our interest, nor is it in the Iranians' government interest to engage in a conflict within the region. If we were hurt, they would be harmed. If they were harmed, we would be harmed as well. So Qatar, as we said from the beginning, is standing in somehow in the middle of a regional struggle and it attempting to balance relations with all of the engaging parties. We do have good relations with Iran, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't have good relations with our neighboring and sisters GCC countries and GCC states. Oman, one would say they had a distinguished relations with Iran that is very different than the rest of the Gulf states. But Qatar, throughout different, let's say, political maneuvers or political contestations between the Gulf states and Iran have always took the middle ground, have always called for dialogue, have always pushed for acceptance of Iran within the region and engaging with it rather than isolating it. And thankfully, I think it was back in 2020 when the Saudis and the Iranis they've signed with the efforts of Iraqis actually more than China and pushing for the normalization treaties between both the powers. And there is still actually fear of another struggle that might come up within the region, especially with Israel's attack on Lebanon and the response from the Lebanese government. So you never know. And definitely Iran will not hold back. If Israel attacked them, they will definitely respond back. And once they do, we will probably be pulled back into this struggle. So let's hope that things take better trajectory. People would make better choices. Let's hope that they would be wise enough to know what to do instead of choosing, let's say, the hard option of engaging into violence, basically, instead of dialogue.
See, yes, no secret. You have relation with Iran,
No,
and
it's not a secret. All of the Gulf,
right,
they know.
right. So
Mhm.
you can say both Iran and Qatar are Gulf region?
Iran is not member of the GCC organization. Qatar is. The GCC organization has only six states, which is Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. Those are considered to be the GCC countries, and that was established mainly due the Iran-Iraq war, where they came to the realization that they needed to have a securitization agreement to balance the power of the other powers within the region, especially Iraq and Iran. But that securitization understanding have shifted and changed throughout the course of history. Definitely, there was the invasion of Kuwait. Then you have the hiccups of the mid 2000s, where there were changes within each state of the GCC. And then you also have the crisis or the change in Qatar's regime, where the other GCC countries, they didn't accept the change in the leadership from Sheikh Hamad taking power from his father in a bloodless coup. And then you have back in 2017. And even before 2017, during the Arab Spring, all of the GCC countries, they had different approaches to the regional changes and also the dynamic in Bahrain's. And then you have in 2017, where was it basically the Gulfi blockade on Qatar, where the other four, it was basically UAE, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia with Egypt. They blocked Qatar and Kuwait and Oman. They maintained the relation and attempted to mediate in that conflict, and that struggle continued from 2017 up till 2020, where because of the lasting and economic basically it came out with the negative aspects. The Saudis and the Emiratis, they thought that there will be a regime change, and they hoped that it would somehow affect Qatar's relations with Iran, but it actually went the other way around. It strengthened Qatar's relations with Iran because we depended on them mainly for economic and the transportations lines between different countries. And also we established, or we've opened the base of Turkey during that time. We have a base, a military base of, it's not as big as the US one, but there is the base of Turkey here. So they basically saw that the Qatar was drifting a bit away from the intended trajectory that they wanted to pull it back to. So by 2020, it somehow they came to an agreement to end the blockade, but let's say the political, economical, social roots of that blockade, they didn't deal with it. So they brushed it under the rugs, hoping that it would affect it somehow. And thankfully, within 2020, it was the same time that the Saudi have changed their approach in dealing with Iran and dealing with the regional, basically, struggles. Instead of attempting to change into accepting and focusing on economic diversifications within the state and outside.
It's also some kind of complicated, right? BCC
It
member.
is very complicated.
Uh,
There was the initiative to invite Jordan and Morocco to join the GCC, but I think it didn't gain the support from the GCC states themselves as well.
I don't think so because Morocco is not nearby God,
They didn't think of it from a geographical aspect. I think what
Right.
they thought of was the monarchy, the systems, the political systems of governance. I think that was their approach in inviting, or the initiative that came about, but it didn't see light.
Like, I mean, if then all Arab countries could be GCC member if
If
Morocco,
they were a monarchy, probably according to that initiative, they would have been. But
right?
even the GCC, they still claim, like in their first amendment, in their first basically treatment of establishing the council itself, that they are all Arabs and part of the Arab League. So they're not distancing themselves from the Arab League.
So I guess GCC is mainly security, military.
Oman, for example, they don't depend heavily on the US. They have more of UK European, let's say, shifts in their security aspect. The Saudis, they have different, let's say, partisans for securities. It's not only US, it's Western. I think there is French, German, and they are establishing some relations with some of the Asian countries, especially China. And now they've signed a security treatment with Pakistan, which is interesting. So no, I don't think it started with the understanding of security threats, common security threat, but I see it now as an institution that focus on the cultural, economical cooperations between the states
but I
and a bit
think
of the political.
uh,
Mhm.
more or less directly or indirectly, many of GCC countries are relation with the military back with the US, US military back.
Except
Because
for Oman.
right, even they are not directly, but still British and European, US very much
Western,
US
yes. If
US
we were to speak
aligned.
about Western alliances, then yes.
So it cannot you get away from US. Still, US can do or influences the you cannot stay away from US influence. So there's even Pakistan. Pakistan very much cooperation with US, especially Navy. Maritime security. I think all GCC member like those Gulf area, the maritime security is US-led maritime security, including Pakistan,
Mhm.
many Gulf countries. They are tackling a lot of pirates or many other conflicts in the region. Last time I talked with Pakistan Navy officer too. They are doing such things, such activity. What can you say? What will be the main challenges? Security.
Each state they have their own understanding of what would be considered as a threat. It's not the same as when they established the council itself in the early 80s, where they had a shared understanding of threat. But nowadays, I don't see that to be the same. They're having their own policies, their own trajectories of basically perfecting and implying somehow their visions. So we can't generalize the understanding or the conception of security overall from one to all. But still, there is the common, one would say, security aspects that influence all states, not only Qatar, but not only the GCC countries. It's basically something, let's say, the identity threats. This was basically my thesis on. There is the fear of the change within their own societies, the rise of, one would say, reform requests, the economical burden that they have, because the understanding of a rentier state is not, or a welfare state is challenging nowadays. It's pretty pricey and pretty expensive to maintain the relationships that exist or they've established their institutions on with the social contract with their people. And there is also the external threats that exist for all of the other states. Sadly, the region is unstable. Sadly, the region is a bit fragile. Sadly, we have a lot of nuts. I'm not going to say weak state, but states that are finding it hard to maintain their stability and peace, and they are somehow prone to regional and foreign interventions into their affairs. Those We have food securities, we have water securities, we have environmental securities. So all of those are threats that they are handling somehow and challenged into maintaining and addressing to provide solutions, or at least come up with strategies, whether if it would be for a short or a long-term solutions to provide for the needs of their nations, the expectations of, let's say, the international institutions, and also the stabilities of their own governance, which is, I would say, the biggest security obstacles that any state would face.
I'm not sure uh, the Gulf country has a desire of full democracy. Many it's a monarchy or authoritarian system will be able to fulfill democracy in the Gulf country.
They have to eventually. It's not full democracy. It's when I say changes or reforms, it's not with the Western perspective of democracy. There is, let's say, but there isn't an agreement for what democracy or the perfect system of democracy. It's, as they say, it's the worst system that exists, but there is nothing better than it. If one would say, we're not saying that the rule of people is the best type of rule. I'm sure that you know that we both studied political science, so we understand the meaning of tyranny of majority. We have someone like Trump that exists who shouldn't, who shouldn't be at all in power, but still. It's basically the demand for reform. You have an outdated institutions. You have constitutions that were written back in the 60s, 70s, and uh, they're a bit frozen. It's hard to change into them. So you have all of these challenges and the rising demand, and also the raising living of standards and the mass unemployment that the government cannot contain for a long time. So those will be troubles that states are facing and attempting somehow to address, because if you don't address these issues, you wouldn't be able to have a sustainable economy, you wouldn't be able to have a stable political governance, you wouldn't be able to conduct relations with the external or foreign countries if you're not secured inside. And you have all of these changes that sometimes would come outside of legal or let's say acceptable institutional practices, where somehow the leaderships or regimes within such states, they preserve themselves as to be immune from the rules and regulation, and that definitely couldn't be the case for a long time.